The shocking allegations levelled at Sean Diddy Combs have burst the floodgates on salacious claims about an industry many people believe harboured a monster. Understandably, the internet's ablaze with claims about these events and whether other powerful figures were involved too. Well, last week I interviewed Jaguar Wright, a singer-songwriter who's made claims about Diddy for years. Those claims had already received a lot of attention in the media across many platforms for many years. And that's the thing about platforms. The reality of the modern world is that pretty much everyone has a platform as long as they have something to say that other people want to hear. That's why we invited her on to be interviewed. The people making these claims have an audience with or without shows like mine. Well, Jaguar Wright unexpectedly made several serious allegations about Jay-Z and Beyonce during that interview. As I said in the moment, they were not present to respond or defend themselves, but now they have. Their lawyers contacted us to say that those claims were totally false and have no basis in fact, and we've therefore complied with the legal request to cut them from the original interview.
Where's the 50 Jay-Z competition? That's the one I've been waiting for.
I say shame on Piers Morgan.
Well, why shame on him and not shame on everybody else?
When you have a platform that people actually consider viable and you invite this, it's almost like
The streets are buzzing about how 50 Cent had Piers Morgan shaking in his own interview chair. You won't believe what happened when Piers tried his usual slick talk, thinking he could corner the king of queens. The moment 50 pulled out his receipts, Piers's whole demeanor shifted faster than his Twitter feuds. The way 50 flipped the entire interview had everyone in the studio clutching their pearls.
Doesn't Curtis Jackson tell people that he has a house in Carrollton, and he's had a house in Carrollton for over 7 years, that he comes down here getting a lay of the land, hiring private investigators to follow people.
And then you had really wanted to put on for Dallas artists, so I got to get your take on 50 Cent had recently just went to Shreveport and he put on this whole extravaganza.
I hate that.
Yeah, Hurricane Chris has come to the blogs and said, how could you come here to our place and not put on those Shreveport legends, and you could spend $500,000 on security to keep the hood out, or to keep the hood from going?
Cause he don't give none of them about none of them boys. He don't give a fuck about Louisiana. Cause I tell you one thing, the second that Curtis got down there, right before me and my son were separated from each other, we went home for a visit. And the fishing hole that we went to, where fish are normally jumping, all of a sudden died. There was nothing out there. You could smell the poison in the water, which of course would irrigation, which of course would bring storms around. You know, you gotta like multimillionaires when they start creating tragedies to pretend to be heroes for. Why did Curtis Jackson lie to everybody? Why doesn't Curtis Jackson tell people that he has a house in Carrollton, and he's had a house in Carrollton for over 7 years? That he comes down here getting a lay of the land, hiring private investigators to follow people around.
Girl, let me tell you what went down when Piers Morgan strutted into that studio. Like, he owned the place. This man really thought he was about to serve up one of his signature takedowns. You know, the type where he acts all proper and British while throwing shade left and right. Piers entered with that signature smirk, looking at 50 like he was just another celebrity he could embarrass for views. Dressed in his press suit, adjusting those expensive cufflinks, he thought he had the perfect plan to make 50 look small. The energy in the room was already getting spicy before anyone even said a word. Now, if you've ever seen a Piers Morgan interview, you know his playbook. He starts off friendly, throwing in those little backhanded compliments, then bam. He hits you with that condescending tone that feels like a lecture from your least favorite teacher. The way he cuts people off mid-sentence, acting like he knows more about their lives than they do, it's all part of his routine. He was serving that up to 50, thinking he had the perfect angle. Then, he started talking about 50's music career, like it was some happy accident, implying our boy just stumbled into success without any business sense. The disrespect was real, as if 50 wasn't out here building entire empires while Piers was still trying to boost his Twitter following. Then Morgan pulled what he thought was his ace card, bringing up 50's past. You could see him getting all excited, thinking he was about to deliver some gotcha journalism, digging into old stories to paint 50 as just another street kid who got lucky. But here's the thing, 50 wasn't even flinching. He was sitting there cool as ever, watching Piers dig himself deeper and deeper.
How bad was it?
That's what I care about. I care about the victims.
No, I understand. How bad was it, do you think? What was going on?
I'm going to tell you right now that me, as a woman who has been in the industry for over 30 years, I've been performing live since I was 13. My first handler was McKinley Horton. I come to find out 25 years later that a scar that was on his face with a very elaborate story he gave me was put there by a woman who he assaulted. To live through these things and hear your elders in the business, people like Patti LaBelle say, just avoid him, honey. And being taught to be just avoid him, honey. It's not good enough. Not when you live through these things, you're still suffering the PTSD created by all of this, and you're talking to a victim that's 20 years younger than you, and she's telling you the exact same thing that happened to you.
Right, there's been a lot of rumor mill about what has happened in the rap world. A lot of allegations that the misogyny in the lyrics clearly was based on a general misogyny towards women away from the music, and that clearly seems to have been borne out by these charges against Diddy, which if he's found guilty of all this, he's never coming out of prison. How dangerous do you think?
Thank God.
How dangerous do you think he is as a person?
I think he's one of the most dangerous people I've ever met. A lot of people have been questioning, well, she doesn't really know him. She has no knowledge of him. She doesn't have a picture with him. I'm smarter than Claudia Jordan. I would never take a picture with the devil. Everyone knew he was the devil. He's been the devil for 30 years. He's been covered and protected by not only Clive Davis, but Lucian Grange. He was selected to be the demon that he is, to keep the culture in line so the industry could continue to rape it for all of its precious jewels. We have too many lost. The list of lost is ridiculous, and everyone knows Diddy was selected for this job. He's the Judas.
Do you think that if he's cornered in the way that he's been now, that he may start revealing things about other people?
He has no choice. His ego and his drug addiction won't allow him to do anything different. Anybody who thinks he's not going to talk is crazy. The simple fact that he's not saying more now only means that the people who have been protecting him all along, who put him in position to be such a horror to the Black community, still find value in him. He's got everybody on tape. They all know it.
The beautiful part? 50 didn't even try to stop him. He just let Piers keep running his mouth, nodding along like he was actually impressed by all the basic research Morgan's team had pulled up. Every time Piers thought he was landing a hit, 50 just gave him that look. You know, the one that says someone's already 10 steps ahead of you, but is letting you play yourself. And baby, the tension in that studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The camera crew was trying to maintain professionalism, but you could see them stealing glances at each other. They knew something was brewing. The way 50 kept that slight smile on his face while Piers was going through his little performance felt like watching a chess master let their opponent think they were winning, right before delivering the checkmate. It got to the point where even Piers's usual confident demeanor started to show cracks. He kept shuffling his interview cards and taking extra sips of water, probably wondering why his usual tactics weren't getting under 50's skin. The whole vibe in that room was like watching someone walk straight into a trap they set for someone else. It was about to get real messy.
At these freak-off parties, what were they like?
See, this is the thing. Everything that I'm about to say to you is not my firsthand knowledge. It is my firsthand witness account experience. I was a sex worker. I was a dominatrix before I got my record deal. That's how I know how the dark world and the sex world and the entertainment world run hand in hand. That's why the movie Blink Twice is so important. Salute to Zoe Kravitz. The sex workers that I have worked with throughout the years and continue to work with even to this day have worn hidden cameras. I have my own tapes. I've seen what they do. The ritualistic behaviors, the drugging, putting girls in the suitcases, dumping them in alleyways. It's horrifying. And it's all done under the protection of, this is going to be paid off. There's another NDA. This is going to be, it's terrible.
It seems to have been something that a lot of people knew about, but people were simply too scared to talk about.
Everyone knows. And every person that's sitting there trying to act surprised knows very well.
Right when Morgan thought he had control of the interview, 50 started speaking a language that made Piers's face freeze faster than a London winter. The streets are saying Morgan wasn't ready for the receipts 50 pulled out about his own past, and we're talking about the kind of evidence that could make someone reconsider their career path. That's when 50 hit him with a corporate flex nobody saw coming. Instead of getting defensive about his history, he began breaking down Morgan's media empire moves like he was delivering a business school lecture. The way 50 switched from street talk to boardroom language had Morgan looking like someone had just changed the rules on him. And baby, when 50 started probing into Piers's own controversies, the entire energy in that room shifted. He brought up Morgan's history with that innocent smile, the kind that's polite but carries the weight of a brewing storm. The crew behind the cameras was trying their hardest not to react, but their faces were telling the whole story. The beautiful part was watching Piers realize this wasn't going his way. Every time he tried to interrupt with one of his signature comebacks, 50 would drop another fact about Morgan's career moves that had him stumbling over his words. Our boy from Queens wasn't just throwing shots. He was breaking down Morgan's whole media strategy, like he'd been studying it for months.
The whole point of this, like Cat Williams said when he sat with Shay Shay earlier this year, the whole point of this is for them in a coordinated effort to pretend like none of it is real, for the public's perception. But everyone knows what's going on, and it's been going on for years. It's been going on before Diddy. See, people keep looking at him like he's the Sputnik that came out of nowhere. This is someone who was designed to be what he is. We got to stop making Diddies. And if we're going to do that, then we got to go back. We got to go back to even further, the mentors of these people. Because Diddy was taught how to do what he does systematically, and Clyde Davis has been his greatest teacher.
Look, Clive Davis is not here to respond to that. Jaguar,
Guess they're on vacation.
If this goes to court, Jaguar, do you think that the world is going to be shocked by what comes out?
Oh, absolutely. I just don't know why they are. It's been happening in front of everyone's faces for decades. For decades.
How many victims?
What's the difference between me and Judy Garland? Social media.
How many victims?
There was none for her.
How many victims potentially do you think there could be?
Thousands. Thousands. I've talked to hundreds that I deal with still myself. I think people should really look into that more. I am friends with Albie Shore. I love him. I love his children. I knew Kim. We used to all hang out together at the Kit Kat Club back in the mid-90s when Diddy was first starting his reign. I watched that whole thing happen. And everything that Albert has been through, every attempt on his life that has been ignored by the authorities, It all leads back to Diddy, and everyone knows it. The wiretapping of the phones, putting air tag on children during visits. These are normal practices that these people do.
You could literally see the moment Morgan realized he wasn't dealing with just another celebrity he could push around. 50 began discussing market penetration strategies and media consolidation like he was teaching a masterclass. The way he connected the dots between Morgan's career choices and his public persona had everyone in that studio looking at their phones, trying to fact-check what they were hearing. And let me tell you about the power move 50 pulled next. He started asking questions about Morgan's own business decisions, adopting the same condescending tone Piers usually uses on his guests. But instead of getting messy with it, 50 kept it strictly business, which somehow made it even more devastating. The way he dissected Morgan's entire career strategy had Piers looking like he needed to call his PR team ASAP. You could see how quickly Morgan stopped with those interruptions when 50 started dropping knowledge about media industry metrics and market share analysis. This wasn't the conversation Piers thought he was going to have, and baby, it showed. Every time he tried to steer the interview back to his comfort zone, 50 would hit him with another strategic observation that made him look like he needed to update his LinkedIn profile. By this point, Morgan's signature smirk had completely disappeared. The man who walked in thinking he was going to school 50 Cent was receiving a whole different kind of education. And the best part? 50 maintained that same calm energy throughout, as if he were casually discussing business strategy over coffee.
Just like New York, just like Mount Vernon, New York City, Mount Vernon, and Miami, all that is the same, bruh. Nobody wants to be near him. Nobody wants to touch what he touched, be where he at. You understand? It's crazy, bruh, how his fall from grace, which was never from grace. It's just like the devil just kicked him out of hell, because he was never in nothing graceful and did anything graceful. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what you say about, okay, he did the music, he had the bad boy legacy and everything like that, man. But, you know, a few albums, a few people, you know, made to be famous, but they not here to tell their story. Black Rob, Biggie, Craig Mack. They not here to tell their story, bro. And now you got everybody telling his story.
Yeah, and I know 50, he did a recent interview with US Weekly saying that the reason why rappers are quiet about, you know, Diddy's situation is because they've been to his parties and they don't know what got caught on tape.
Bruh, those people who was caught at Diddy party did not know that he had 250 tape recorders in that house. That's a big house. But he had 250 tape recorders in that house that they took, that the feds found. So now with them finding all that and you being at a Diddy party, you know you may have done something that was caught on one of those tapes. You just better pray to God that they don't recognize you. Those people who know that they did something, no, they're not going to speak out. They're not going to say nothing. What part of the game is that? They are not going to come forward and tell on themselves. Nah, not at all. Ice Cube, he said it himself, bro. He said that Diddy's been targeted because of what he said about those folks and those people. Now, the people who was on those tapes may feel like Diddy might be targeting them. Because if he's asked about who is this, who is that, and he's under oath with the federal government, he got to tell them. He's not going to plead the fifth.
Yeah, I know that got to be a terrible feeling, man. You know you did something wrong at Diddy party, and you hoping and praying that it's not caught on tape.
But they don't think they did nothing wrong. That's their lifestyle. That's their lifestyle, bruh. I ask guys all the time, if two men lay down, how many homos get up? What you mean? I mean what I mean. It's what it is.
You could literally see the moment Morgan realized he wasn't dealing with just another celebrity he could push around. 50 began discussing market penetration strategies and media consolidation like he was teaching a masterclass. The way he connected the dots between Morgan's career choices and his public persona had everyone in that studio looking at their phones, trying to fact-check what they were hearing. And let me tell you about the power move 50 pulled next. He started asking questions about Morgan's own business decisions, adopting the same condescending tone Piers usually uses on his guests. But instead of getting messy with it, 50 kept it strictly business, which somehow made it even more devastating. The way he dissected Morgan's entire career strategy had Piers looking like he needed to call his PR team ASAP. You could see how quickly Morgan stopped with those interruptions when 50 started dropping knowledge about media industry metrics and market share analysis. This wasn't the conversation Piers thought he was going to have, and baby, it showed. Every time he tried to steer the interview back to his comfort zone, 50 would hit him with another strategic observation that made him look like he needed to update his LinkedIn profile. By this point, Morgan's signature smirk had completely disappeared. The man who walked in thinking he was going to school 50 Cent was receiving a whole different kind of education. And the best part? 50 maintained that same calm energy throughout, as if he were casually discussing business strategy over coffee.
Why didn't he tell anybody that Millennium Studios, which is now G-Unit Studios, was already there? Why is he pretending like he built it from the ground up? He didn't. He bought it. I know Millennium. I used to go there all the time.
Yeah, it did exist.
Yeah, I know. So why did he lie to everybody? Why did he tell everybody his studio was going to be in Texas? Why did he keep it so quiet? Why didn't nobody in Shreveport know that he was making such a large acquisition? There would have to be some kind of paperwork there. It's almost as if that sale happened overnight. Not even anyone in the clerk's office knew about it, and I would know. I know the clerk. That's my town.
Yeah, you be in Shreveport.
Those are my people. What is it with all of these pretenders? And now they got an even bigger one named Curtis Jackson. They should check the EPA report since he's been there and the toxic waste he's been allowing to be dumped around the property of Millennium Studios for cheap cash. And I'm not saying allegedly, Curtis. I know what you've been doing. You don't get no about what happens to those people in that town, but I do. I love the people in that town. I just wonder how you like that man I sent you. Because he really didn't think you was gonna go for him. You, Curtis, you better do right by Shreveport, or I'm gonna let everybody know that Diddy doo-wop bop ain't the only taste you got.
So, just to switch gears.
Curtis. I'm sick and tired of him. I'd have more respect for him if he came out the closet.
It seems like...
Because he's a lot more Bogart than Brooklyn.
It seems like 50 Cent is trying to take down Diddy.
No, he's trying to move Diddy and Jay-Z out the way so he can run it. And the truth is, I ain't mad at him. I just don't trust him. Because the truth is, he would just be another kind of monster in another kind of way. He don't want things to change. He just want to be the one that's running it. See? Easiest thing to do is to take your enemy's feet and hold them to the fire for things you know that they won't admit. Which is why when that C and D came out, he took all of that Diddy shit down. Because of his tape. Say. I just wish, listen to me, make you no mistake about it. 50 is pure hip hop, pure MC. And he'll just like Mike Tyson. Does every time Mike Tyson stuck his makes him any less the killer that he is in the ring? See, and I think that's the problem that people don't understand when it comes to this hypersexuality in hip hop and masculinity. A lot of people don't realize a lot of the archetypes and everything that they built on are built around Roman soldiers, Greek soldiers who use butt breaking as a way to trauma bond with each other so that they would kill for each other on the field. You got to think about it. Real soldiers back in those days, they didn't spend a lot of time around women. Women were something that happened or something that you did to have babies with. Most of your time was spent with the men in the field. Y'all saw the movie. Did anybody see Brokeback Mountain? You want to know what was the saddest thing? Being on tour buses and watching go broke back.
The beautiful part was watching Morgan's usual interview tactics completely backfire. Every time he tried to cut 50 off or change the subject, 50 would calmly steer the conversation back around with another example. When Morgan attempted his signature move of talking over his guest, 50 simply raised his voice slightly and continued, making Piers look like the one being rude. It was like watching someone trying to use their old karate moves only to realize they were in a chess match. Girl, the cameras caught everything. Those nervous glances Morgan kept throwing off stage, probably looking for help from his producers. The way he kept adjusting his collar suggested it was suddenly too tight. That signature confident posture began to slouch real quick when 50 pointed out how Morgan's tough guy act only surfaces when he's safely behind a screen or facing someone who can't fight back on his level. The moment it really hit Morgan that this wasn't his usual type of interview was written all over his face. He wasn't facing some young celebrity he could intimidate or a social media star he could talk down to. He was up against someone who had done their homework, understood the media game just as well as he did, and wasn't afraid to call it exactly what it was. By this point, Morgan's famous smirk had completely disappeared, replaced by something that resembled genuine concern about what 50 might say next.
Address the prior two panelists. First with Mrs. Jaguar White. She said a lot of things that were very jarring in her explanation of what she saw and had firsthand accounts on. My concern for her, she's saying a lot of things that could be considered libelous. Right. And I would suggest that she contacts an attorney, if only to vet the information she has or purports to have from other victims. At least they can protect her, and then they can also do their due diligence, the attorneys, to make sure that the information she's receiving is accurate outside of the things that she knows and may have proof of. I was very concerned about some of the things that she had said in her prior segment. I also want to address Mr. Vlad, who I know to be a culture vulture, who takes from the Black community and doesn't give back and puts artists in situations where then they are indicted by the police. And he's very much so what we call police type investigation in the Black community. And for him to repudiate what Mrs. Wright has said, I thought was completely out of line. He can say he doesn't agree, which is fine, but for him to be someone who constantly uses the Black community and uses them as a means for his platform, I thought that was very inconsiderate and unprofessional. Now, to get to your question that you asked of me regarding the victims, there are victims coming out every day, even someone who contacted me last night. So, and it's only standing to be more individuals coming out. I do talk to some of the other attorneys who represent victims that we already have known because they filed cases, who have additional victims who plan to come forward and they plan to file cases against very soon. So it's only a matter of how many more are going to come out, and it seems to be, it'll be very many more.
You've said that you've been contacted regarding the sale of one of the Diddy freak-off tapes, but it features a very high-profile celebrity. What can you tell us about that?
So actually, I recently was contacted by one of my business partners who's also an attorney, who said to me, well, why are we not writing the demand letter to try to do the catch and kill? And I said, well, if you want to do it, then I'll connect you and you can essentially do it. He was also concerned about wanting to protect the other person who was in the film, mainly because I've known about this for about 3.5 weeks to about a month. I've been communicating with these people who purport to have that videotape. And it wasn't until Thursday night that they outright said, can you write on your letterhead a letter to the individual who's also in the tape and see if they're interested in a catch and kill? And is that something, we'll give you X amount of percentage of it. And at the time I was like, I don't think I want to be involved in this, but I hadn't had time to process. But the other attorney I'm speaking of, he's pretty much been in the know the entire time since I first got contacted by these individuals with the tape. And we're pursuing now a meeting with the three of us for us to broker, I guess, a situation where we'll have certain guarantees that once we
Clip 8. That famous Morgan smirk disappeared faster than the views on your exit story when 50 flipped the whole script. Let me tell you about the moment Morgan realized he wasn't just losing control of the interview. He was becoming the one being interviewed, and there wasn't a single thing he could do about it. The power shift in that studio was palpable. 50 had completely taken over, and Morgan was sitting there nodding along like one of those dashboard bobbleheads, agreeing with everything 50 said. You could see Morgan desperately trying to salvage what was left of his dignity, throwing in weak comments like, yes, absolutely, and that's a fair point, every time 50 made another astute observation about his career. The real gag was watching Morgan morph into the very thing he usually mocks, a defensive interview guest. Every time 50 asked him a direct question about his media tactics, Morgan would start rambling, trying to explain himself like he was in the hot seat. And the studio audience? They weren't having it. They began laughing at all the wrong moments. Wrong for Morgan, that is. Every time he tried to crack one of his usual snarky jokes, the crowd was already laughing at his obvious discomfort instead.
The internet's ablaze with claims about these events and whether other powerful figures were involved too. Well, last week I interviewed Jaguar Wright, a singer-songwriter who's made claims about Diddy for years. Those claims had already received a lot of attention in the media across many platforms for many years. And that's the thing about platforms. The reality of the modern world is that pretty much everyone has a platform as long as they have something to say that other people want to hear. That's why we invited her on to be interviewed. The people making these claims have an audience with or without shows like mine. Well, Jaguar Wright unexpectedly made several serious allegations about Jay-Z and Beyonce during that interview. As I said in the moment, they were not present to respond or defend themselves. But now they have. Their lawyers contacted us to say that those claims were totally false and have no basis in fact, and we've therefore complied with the legal request to cut them from the original interview. Editing interviews is not something we do lightly at a show called Uncensored. But, like the proverbial cries of fire in a crowded theatre, there are legal limits on us too. And we apologise to Jay-Z.
Baby. The way 50 kept his cool while completely dismantling Morgan's whole interview style was a masterclass in power moves. He didn't need to raise his voice or get aggressive. He just kept asking perfectly calculated questions that had Morgan squirming in his seat. The street smarts were showing up, proving that all those years of reading people in Queens were worth more than any fancy journalism school. Then came the moment Morgan tried to pull his emergency ripcord. Well, I think we should wrap this up, he said, attempting to end the segment early. But 50 wasn't having it. He kept the conversation flowing with an innocent, "Oh, but I thought we were just getting to the interesting part" energy, leaving Morgan looking like he wanted to disappear into his chair. The producers behind the scenes were frozen, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let this beautiful disaster keep unfolding. The aftermath? Morgan's own team struggled to maintain their professional composure. Camera operators were trying to hide their smiles, producers were whispering behind their clipboards, and makeup artists in the back of the studio weren't even attempting to conceal their reactions every time 50 landed another point about Morgan's media manipulation tactics. You could see his staff exchanging knowing looks as if to say, yeah, he's not wrong though. That's the thing about real recognizing real. Morgan's carefully constructed media persona was crumbling in real time, while 50's authentic approach just kept getting stronger. By the end of that segment, the power dynamic had shifted so completely that Morgan was practically asking 50 for permission to ask his own questions on his own show. The streets were witnessing a masterclass in how to flip the script without ever losing your cool, and the lesson was clear. Sometimes the best way to handle a media bully is to let them expose themselves. That interview changed the game for celebrity sit-downs. The streets are still buzzing about how 50 walked into that studio with nothing but facts and confidence, leaving Morgan's whole media facade in ruins. No fancy PR team, no rehearsed answers, just pure, unfiltered realness. Even Morgan's ride-or-die supporters had to admit their boy met his match that day. The way 50 let Morgan think he was in control only to flip the whole script? That's the kind of power move they don't teach you in media training school. Sometimes the smartest strategy is letting someone get comfortable thinking they've got you cornered, right before you show them who's really running the game.